when you enlarge the scope to realize that your life, this is a short life in the flesh, then the solutions become more apparent that we need to go spiritual. Look at this world as a perfect example. Remember, we're always talking about the individual level and the collective level. This world on the collective level is a perfect example of a total entity that has not had spirituality as the answer. Sure, we've tried our religions, and they have done the good that they've done, as in some people are seeing the light, and the world would be in a much worse place if there wasn't these spiritual beings and people working to affect a change. But we don't have the total picture. It's very secularized, or it's compartmentalized into man's religions, which are kind of like theologies, philosophical. I don't even know how to describe them other than man's religions. True religion is your own personal relationship to deity and divinity. It's cosmic in scope, and it is your spirituality. I think a common buzzword way to describe it is they call it religion versus spirituality. The Urantia book doesn't make that distinction. They call it the difference between something like man's religions, which is the evolved religions, and revealed religions, which is a revelation of the expansion of understanding beyond what is simply evolved through fear. Okay, a revealed religion of love, and we're really not practicing that here on this planet in totality, because you can plainly see that we're in the wrong paradigm, and it's just going to get worse and worse, and to the point where we're going to face something that we can't navigate. Okay, we always think we can navigate these big issues that come across. Oh sure, we'll have a war, that's okay, then those people will fight it, or blah blah blah, it's going to be over there. Oh, we'll have a big catastrophic climate event. Oh, that's okay. We'll rebuild afterward. Well, something's going to come up where it's not going to be like that, and it's going to affect a massive, massive change. And the Christians would call it the end times, but I would call it the end of the world system of things, not the end of the world. It's going to be the big wake up event, but there's going to be a lot of struggle and turmoil in that. But we as pioneers are looking beyond that, and we're looking to maybe even circumvent that. Maybe we can even affect some sort of a change that can make that happen. But it's going to be a faith walk, and you're going to be looked at as some sort of a religious, maybe even I don't want to say fanatic, because we're not fanatical about it, but to somebody who is a pure atheistic mind, any type of spirituality and religion is fanaticism. Even though it look what it does in the lives of its believers, it makes them more calm, more tempered people. It makes them more loving of a neighbor. They don't flip out and do road rage because they're remembering their lessons of Jesus of Nazareth from 2,000 years ago. So it's anything but fanaticism. It's really well balanced judgment. So we're looking at on page 1097. This is religion and human experience. So if you're into the Urantia book, these whole real nature of religion things, remember a lot of the book is far off stuff meant for the future you in order to comprehend those things. But a lot of this stuff is really searing stuff that is applicable to right now. So let's look at problems of growth. Remember, the soul is growth. Without growth, the soul doesn't exist. The universe is built upon constant growth and evolution. Okay, so if somebody wants to stagnate in a certain concept, then they're eventually going to divorce themselves from reality, and that stagnation is sure death. That stagnation is non-existence. Okay, that's you. You're choosing to do non-existence. But remember, in growth, you don't need to struggle with the growth or make up new ways in order. You just have to go about your own life in a relaxed and flowing manner, so that these growth opportunities are going to be there. The universe is just putting them in your place. The only thing that you have to not do is purposely stagnate in some sort of laziness, status. And remember, as pioneers here, folks, we're more than just well-meaning people. There's a lot of well-meaning people out there who will fix your tire, but then they'll elect some sort of, corrupted billionaire in there that's going to do deregulation because they're spiritually blind and philosophically blind. And then they're going to put somebody into power that's going to deregulate environmental types of scenarios. And then big business is going to be able to, continue to destroy the planet. They're going to be able to, poison the food supply and all that sort of stuff. Because that well-meaning person who will help you fix your tire is spiritually blind, okay? And they've stagnated philosophically. So they're not really putting the total picture. So they don't really understand what the status, how misaligned the status quo is with universal truth. And truth is living. So let's look at this problems of growth. Now remember, religious living, when they say that, you can put spiritual in there. Remember, that's when they talk about religion here and these types of things, folks, they're talking about it positively. Okay, this is actual. You'll see as we go. Okay, religious living is devoted living, and devoted living is creative living. See, that's more than well-meaning. Okay, you're devoted at that point. Now you're a pioneer because you're creating. Original and spontaneous. See these words? This is the life. This is the romance of the adventure that we want to embark upon. Well-meaning is fine, and not to put anybody down. They're just where they're at, okay? Somebody who's just subdued. They've been subdued by the culture on purpose, by design, so that they can elect the person into power who's going to, deregulate or push these corrupted measures that are going to enrich the few and impoverish the many. So that's just where they're at. They're not being original and spontaneous. What would they call it? A robot mind. And that's what we have here. And the robot minds, what they end up becoming is a sleeping survivor because they haven't sold their souls. They've been misguided on a planet, but they're not doing rigorous living and rigorous growth. New religious insights arise out of conflicts which initiate the choosing of new and better reaction habits in the place of older and inferior reaction patterns. So you're trying to make this your natural state of things is to choose the will of the Father. We are on our journey to mastery. And because remember, look at the conflict is already automatically there. This is a time-space universe. It's inherent that we're going to have these conflict and growth opportunities. That's why you can relax and flow through them, and you don't need to try to force new and ones. And conflict persists only in the face of refusal to espouse the higher values connoted in superior meanings. So when you understand it, you have to live it. It can't just be a theology. It's got to be a lifestyle change, growth. You have to live these things, or else it's just going to be continuously conflicting. Religious perplexities are inevitable. There can be no growth without psychic conflict and spiritual agitation. The organization of a philosophic standard of living entails considerable commotion in the philosophic realms of mind, and that's by design. But it doesn't need to be this heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching struggle where you're pitted against your neighbor because he's a different political party, and you're going to go to religious war over this and drop bombs over this. That's where it gets fanatical, and that's why we're out of lockstep with the actual progression of the universe, which is all taken care of, and it's not a surprise. But loyalties are not exercised in behalf of the great, the good, the true, and the noble without struggle, okay? Effort is attendant upon clarification of spiritual vision and enhancement of cosmic insight. Because remember, without effort, stagnation is death. So you want to be continuously growing at your own pace. If it's too quick of a pace, then that's where you would literally get fanatical. And the human intellect protests against being weaned from subsisting upon the non spiritual energies of temporal existence. This is this sort of slothful person. Look at the slothful animal mind rebels at the effort required to wrestle with cosmic problem solving. And where are they going to go to? Their comforts, their escapisms, their foods, their drugs, their remember it's they used to have a phrase wine, women, and song. But you can replace that wine being anything you eat and drink and drug, okay? Women you can replace with any sort of sex addiction, and song you can replace with entertainment industry, your technology, your TV, all that type of stuff, your movies, your phones. I know I see the irony of me giving this speech on a phone right now, but we do with what we can. But it's remember, it's the misuse and abuse of those things. That's the issue here, okay? They're going to go into those escapisms because they don't want to tackle these problems, these cosmic problem solving types of deals, which eventually you have to tackle it, okay? Remember, delay isn't avoidance, it's merely a delay. So remember, like we said, that you'll be a sleeping survivor if you don't tackle it. And 1,000 years are going to go by, and your what's called your relatives are going to be advanced, maybe even on different worlds, and you're going to wake up and say, "Oh, what happened to my relative? He actually died after me. What happened? Oh, well, he actually resurrected on the third mansion world because he decided to get his stuff together here." And it makes perfect sense. Wouldn't you want a universe where what you do on this side matters on what happens on the other side? Or should this all just be in vain? Should this all either be in vain and all you do at the end of it is just take a dirt nap? Okay? Your grandma just took a dirt nap and now there's no such thing as that being for the rest of existence and life is okay, just this temporal thing. I wouldn't want that. And then if you're somebody who doesn't want that and then you proceed to seek truth, you find out that that truly is not the case. And that's what I can absolutely assure you of through my own religious experiences. And you can have those if you hadn't had them already. Maybe you've had ones that are even beyond mine. And if you have, then you're assured of the absolute truth of spirituality. And it's so as somebody who's assured of the truth of spirituality, it's very interesting living in this world and having conversations because you can't say anything to prove it to them. You just have to live it and then see how it all plays out in the end. Okay? Remember, this is the adventure here, the great adventure. But we're living the adventure as a lighthouse, a powerhouse, and a pioneer. But the great problem of religious living consists in the task of unifying the soul powers of personality by the dominance of love. Look at all caps there. Hugely important. That's your basis for the unity of it, not mental acuity or anything like that. They'll all come in line, but ultimately, look at health, 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 lifestyle. The Urantia book talking about lifestyle for all those people, the Urantia readers out there that make a dogmatize it into a religion, a philosophy, not a living standard of lifestyle. Look at health, mental efficiency, and those two are all tied in together, and happiness, all tied in. Personality arise from the unification of physical systems. See this, people? This is a huge key line here. What is the unification of physical systems? Eating cancer-causing animal slaughter? No. Alcohol, smoking, all that type of stuff. That's not You're fighting against your physical. You're polluting the earthly tabernacle in that, as they called it in another quote. Mind systems and spirit systems. Look at this, people. Of health and sanity, man understands much. He understands it, but he doesn't go for it, right? We get that that it causes us cancer, but and rightfully so, and understandably so. We have lived in this world that's programmed us to go to our escapisms as the way. But what's the ultimate escapism? Well, it's reality, spiritual reality, and you're not escaping then. It's the difference between escaping to avoid a problem or growing to avoid the problem. And which would you want to be in this planet? Of health and sanity, man understands much, but of happiness, he has truly realized very little. The highest happiness is indissolubly linked with spiritual progress. Oops, are we out of focus here? There we go. Can we come in? All right, doesn't like the blue for now. Okay. Spiritual growth yields lasting joy. See this, people? Okay, nobody would get this if they are atheists, okay? And a well-meaning atheist, which I would call a secular humanist, very well-meaning, and they might have great ideas about how to have a peaceful society. And they're not all bad, right? And they're only just missing the mark on this spiritual understanding, and they'll get it. They're sincere people, so they're going to get it, but it's going to take their resurrection in order for them to get it. For most of the people, or a religious person who doesn't understand that we're all under the same God and they want to do bombing of another country based on religion and that they need to take over because they're the chosen people, this and that. They're not going to understand this stuff until they're resurrected because they are sincere. So I don't think that there's all hope is lost for these individuals. I'm not saying that. But if they could get it now, we could affect these changes much quicker and we won't have to go through the. Remember, we learn our lessons. This is always collectively and on an individual level. We learn our lessons one of two ways. Plan A is gentle love and guidance, telling the baby, do not put your hand on the stove, it will burn you, and burning is bad. That's plan A. So telling the human beings that the highest happiness is indissolubly, tongue twister, linked with spiritual progress. Okay? You tell somebody that. This book is revealing that to people. Okay? And some of us may get it, and some of us might take that leap of faith and say, okay, well then what is spiritual progress? And you go on this whole journey where it's individual to you. Maybe it involves a Krishna at some point. And then you say, Krishna is kind of just this image thing, but it's not the real heart and soul of it. And then you move on to this and that. You do whatever journey that you want to do with this, what that is, right? But eventually you're going inward. To go inward is to go outward and upward. Spiritual growth yields lasting joy. See, it's lasting. Whereas the other one, your escapisms are based on temporal, which passes all understanding. That's what Master Jesus said, I believe. I have a peace which passes all understanding. So you don't even need to write the theorem down as to why it's working. Yeah, you'll have a much better grasp of it. I mean, look at this book. This book is a big 2,000 long page book about these exact various topics. So there's a lot of detail there. And this is only just scratching the surface in the universe. So there is a lot of detail. And remember that diversity of detail is not complexity. Man complicates, God simplifies. You can have diversity of a lot of different things to understand, but because they all fit in and because they're all based in this spiritual truth, they're not exactly complex. It's diversified. We want a diversified life. In physical life, the senses tell of the existence of things. Mind discovers the reality of meanings, but the spiritual experience reveals to the individual the true values of life. So you're going even, this is to the heart, people. This is shooting to the heart. Reality of meanings, okay, you could still be on the philosophical head trip there. But then when you go to the values of life, this is your essence. These high levels of human living are attained in the supreme love of God and the unselfish love of man. That is what will change the world. That understanding, nothing else. If you love your fellow men, you must have discovered their values. So you know what makes them tick. Jesus loved men so much because he placed such a high value on them. He knows that that soul is eternal. And not only that, but he knows that soul could attain so much in the universe that it becomes you're the person that you pass in the street. Maybe they're a homeless person or they're uh, whatever. They might attain so much in spiritually that they would literally be the most noble being in this local universe or beyond, okay, as far as mortals are concerned. So there's such a high value of the potential of that being, and they must actualize it, and nobody else is going to actualize it for them. And maybe they've already started, because judge not by appearances only. That person might be way more actualized than you. But or even if somebody hasn't, you know they haven't actualized it because of their behavior, because you see them fighting with people, even murdering, or even being one of these fat cats that are literally tanking the world just to put more billions into their pockets and deregulating, polluting, whatever it may be, the whole laundry list. They might eclipse somebody in spiritual understanding that is right now judging them based on what they're doing. We have no idea. So that's why you have to just love them, hope for the best, hope they see the light. And once they get it, like I said, they might go way quicker than you on the realm of ascension. And they might come back to be your teacher on a distant planet. And you'll say, wow, okay, I shouldn't have judged that person. You could judge what they're doing and say that's evil and wrong, and they've lost their soul. They haven't sold their soul. We don't know if they've sold their soul. Maybe they have. Maybe they have sold their soul. I don't know, and I don't care to know. But they're lost. Lost doesn't mean soul. Lost means you're wandering around. What do they say? It's not lost in the theologic sense. A theologic lost soul might be somebody who's doomed for hell, in accordance with Christianity. But these people haven't done that. Maybe some of them have, but there's no hell. I mean, they're going to not resurrect at all. They're just not going to have any existence after this life. If there's no spiritual value, if they want to be completely selfish and evil, they call that, it's a level beyond sin, which they call iniquity. Okay. Placed on such a. You can best discover the value in your associates by discovering their motivation. If someone irritates you, causes feeling of resentment, you should sympathetically seek to discern his viewpoint, his reason for such objectionable conduct. If once you understand your neighbor, you will become tolerant, and his tolerance will grow into friendship and ripen into love. Maybe they're doing this type of thing because they need to feed their kids or something. Maybe they really don't want to lose their kids. You can understand that, and remember, that goes back to that concept of understanding something on an emotional level, but not approving of it on a intellectual level. So we understand why they're having that behavior that's very irritating and possibly even evil. In the mind's eye, conjure up a picture of one of your primitive ancestors of cave-dwelling times. A short, misshapen, filthy, snarling hulk of a man, standing, legs spread, club upraised, breathing hate and animosity as he looked fiercely just ahead. He's soiled, and you'd be like, ugh. Or you could picture the homeless person in the street that's like completely smelly, unshowered, and you would just walk by them and just have a very kind of negative, oh, why didn't you get your act together? What was going on there? Oh, geez, well, maybe they were abused, and maybe they developed schizophrenia because of some terrible situations, um, and so you can. But then it's like, well, what about this caveman individual? Such a picture hardly depicts the divine dignity of man, but allow us to enlarge the picture. In front of his animated human crouches a saber-toothed tiger. Behind him, a woman and two children. See, he's trying to protect his kids. Immediately, you recognize that such a picture stands for the beginnings of much that is fine and noble in the human race. So it's not just you're tolerating, you're actually flipping it there in that situation to see, wow, that's actually nobility. But the man is the same in both pictures. Only in the second sketch, you are favored with a widened horizon, and that's what we're trying to do here. You therein discern the motivation of this evolving mortal. His attitude becomes praiseworthy because you understand him. You could only fathom the motives of your associates. How much better you would understand them if you could only know your fellows. You would eventually fall in love with them. And that's what we're trying to do here, people. We're trying to literally look at that person and enlarge the scope so much that you're like, wow, here is a soul, a one of a kind. Look at, imagine how excited we would get if we dug up the world's largest diamond. That person is way more unique than that diamond because of there's whole planets that are made entirely out of diamond in the universe, but there's only one of that person's soul. You cannot truly love your fellows by mere act of will. Love is only born of thorough understanding, okay? This is what the secular humanists are going to fall short on. What are the secular and this is why our conversation right now is way more advanced than anything that you're going to see out there in the world, unless they're also accessing the Urantia book. Because what do the secular humanists do all day long? Shit on Trump, right? They get it. They're like, this guy is going absolutely bonkers with the corruption, with the deregulation of the business, and the wars, and it's all about lining him and his buddies' pockets and stuff, right? So they understand that, but then what do they turn it into all day long? Shitting on Trump. Whereas we are much more advanced because we see the same things that they see about the selfish greed and all of that, but yet we say we have such an understanding of the universe and the soul and the longevity of what potentially that being could be, potentially, and we don't know. So I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm not going to go out of my way to try to rehabilitate, right? There's a great line about that, it's about receptivity on the part of the individual. So if somebody's not receptive, I'm not going to go out of my way in order to make them see the light or anything like that, because they may have sold their soul. So, but we don't know. So in the meantime, until they don't exist, you love them. You love them up to the point until they literally decide that they don't want to exist anymore. Because you could just be bashing your head against a wall trying to help somebody of that nature, and it's just you're only good at you're misaligning with cosmic understanding at that point, because the better part of valor is backing off. It is not so important to love all men today as it is that each day you learn to love one more human being. Okay. If each day or each week you achieve an understanding of one more of your fellows, and if this is the limit of your ability, then you are certainly socializing and truly spiritualizing your personality. See this sort of breathing space that you're given? Yeah, we want to become perfect masters. We want to know everything that there is to know, and we want to always make the best choices, and we want to emulate the life of Jesus, which is our sort of example that we can do as far as somebody who had this unwavering spiritual love and whatnot. But the breathing space is so vast and understanding, because we too are that badly wounded lost soul. At least I was, and this we all were. I don't see anybody not having that as part of their, just simply by the nature of this, what somebody would call what do they call it? Ancestral trauma, all that sort of stuff. I mean, we're talking, this world system has been in place for thousands of years. Love is infectious, and when human devotion is intelligent and wise, love is more catching than hate. But only genuine and unselfish love is truly contagious. The other types is, if each mortal could only become a focus of dynamic affection, this benign virus of love would soon pervade the sentimental emotion stream of humanity to such an extent that all civilization would be encompassed by love. See, this is world change here. You can't just simply vote the person out without having the concepts behind what comes next. All right? And you can't do that by shitting on that person all day long. And that would be the realization of the brotherhood of man. So that, folks, is what we need to do there. Let's read that last line one more time, okay? If each mortal could only become a focus of a dynamic affection, remember, a lighthouse, that's what you are. If you're reading this video, this benign virus of love would soon pervade the sentimental emotion stream of humanity, okay? It's undeniable. This is the way that humans are wired. And to such an extent that all civilization would be encompassed by love. And then, so then at that point, we would understand that's what we're going for here. We're going for the brotherhood of all, not for the brotherhood of China, or the brotherhood of Russia, or the brotherhood of the United States. That nationalism is that infantile disease. We have to. They're all conniving against each other, and now North Korea and China are trying to buddy up because, or China's trying to blah 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 blah. Okay, it just goes on and on and on and on into this endless cycle until we understand that. All right, people. Thanks. Like and subscribe.